Hello, this is Chase McKinney. Please be advised that the messages discussed in this podcast are of a mental health nature. While I am a counselor, I am not your counselor. This podcast should not replace professional services rendered to you by a mental health professional. If you feel you are in need of one, please seek one out. Hey everyone, welcome to the very next and festive installment of ReFramed. Right now, I am live on Instagram, so if you're watching or you're listening, I can take some questions as we do this and see where it goes. Now, because we're in December, we're in the Christmas season, we're in the holiday season. I wanted to take maybe 1, 2, or 3 episodes this go around to highlight some holiday, some Christmas type episodes or movies, if you will, for these episodes. And with that, we'll talk more about that a little later on. But just wanted to give you a little preview of that. That we'll be talking, Christmas movies, holiday movies for this month of December. So there you go. If the title didn't already, imply that by the time that you're listening to this on Spotify or Stitcher or whatever it is that you listen to. And with that, let me first start off by saying thank you to everyone that does listen week in, week out as we produce this stuff. Really appreciate it. And I'm happy to have y'all listening. Before we dive in to some of this stuff, just want to go ahead and start off like we normally do, and just talk about what's been going on. And it's been a little tough lately for me and my family. Thanksgiving went well, but it was before and after Thanksgiving that we were having some issues. The Sunday before Thanksgiving, we had taken my daughter to the emergency room at Cook Children's in Fort Worth, and because she had some nasty, awful projectile vomiting, and she had a fever of 104.5, and it was god awful. And anyway, we were released a couple hours later, which was great, and she was able to keep her fever away after about Tuesday morning. And it was myself, my wife, and my kiddo. We were all in the house together Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So that was good. My wife worked from home, and I did some school stuff and some reports for work, whenever I'm adulting, that kind of thing. But I started getting a little bit of a cough and a sore throat myself. And it was the day after Thanksgiving that I was decorating our yard, and my voice was just getting worse and worse, and it didn't matter how much tea, Earl Grey hot that I would drink that would remedy it. It was awful. And I finally did telemedicine. If you've never done Doctor on Demand, I highly recommend it. It is fantastic. You need a smartphone and basically a credit card, whether it's your HSA card or just a credit card to, bill services on. They give you 15 minutes basically, and in that 15 minutes you describe everything, and boom, they diagnose you and they get you some drugs, and you're feeling better in about a day or two. And been doing that for a while. Anyways, got some stuff, and I was basically told I was somewhere between something viral and bacterial, like with an upper respiratory thing. And anyway, they're like, if you're not feeling better or noticeably better by Sunday, start taking this medication. So he gave me a couple different medications, and it was ultimately me taking the medications on Sunday or Monday when I really started getting a lot better and feeling better, things like that. So now that wasn't the really bad part that happened. It was right after that. It was a week after we had taken my daughter to Cook Children's that we found ourselves right back at Cook Children's. We were noticing that around Thursday or Friday, or actually Friday, so the same day that I was doing my telemedicine with a doctor, my daughter started coughing herself. And Sunday it was getting a lot worse. She was starting to gag more as she was coughing. And eventually on Sunday, her breathing was like really labored. She was coughing a lot. And my wife was getting very, very concerned. I was very concerned the week before because of like the really high fever, and I didn't want my daughter to have febrile seizures. I had seizures when I was a kid, and I struggled with seizures for about 2 years until God miraculously healed me, and I haven't had any in over 26, almost 27 years. So praise be to God for that. But so the seizures was my big red flag, and my wife's was with the breathing issue. And anyways, we went in probably around 4:30 or 5 Sunday night, a week after our first visit to Cook, and we ended up being admitted because of her breathing. And my daughter wasn't drinking anything; she wasn't really eating any of her bottles. You got to keep in mind she's 14 months old, so she's an itty bitty little thing, and they can't tell you what's going on. They can't use their words really quite yet. So anyway, she was put on an IV, and we stayed in Cook Children's Hospital for about day and a half, 2 days or so. We were discharged Tuesday. I guess that would have been the 27th, thereabouts. Yeah, Tuesday the 27th of November. And that's basically it. And after that, after we were discharged, Elena was definitely feeling a lot better, and that was great. And my wife went on a women's retreat with our church, and it was just my daughter and I for about 3 days, from Wednesday afternoon until Saturday afternoon. So that's like 3 or 4 days that it was just some high quality daddy-daughter time, and it was awesome. Loved it so much. And my wife had a wonderful time at the event. She came back a noticeably different person, in a very positive way. And I'm so grateful that she got to go and that she enjoyed it, and she had such a wonderful time doing that. So I'm very thankful for family and just how things have worked out over the last few days or so, last week or so, with just switching things around. Apart from the family stuff, I'm winding down my first semester at Regent, and anyway, in the midst of finals with my classes, just have to listen to another lecture or two for the semester, and I'm done. One project is a YouTube video that I have to make with my partner, about a 15-minute YouTube video, which is our final exam, which is awesome. Love it. And what's the other one? The other final is just a very difficult multiple guess. That's at least what I call it, multiple guess, multiple choice thing. But fortunately, we get to work with our classmates on it, and it's pretty intense. It would be, I would assume, next to impossible to do if I were doing this on my own, but we were given leeway to be able to research questions and whatnot with our teammates. So that's what we're doing right now. Is the final's been open for a few days now, and it'll close up here in a few days. So by the time you listen to this, either it'll have already happened or it's about to happen with it closing. So I don't know, whatever. It's a really good feeling to almost be done with my first semester of my doc program, and having met so many cool people and folks like that, just love that, and looking forward to what this next semester holds as I approach the back half of my first year. It's crazy to think that in a year I'm going to be halfway done with my core classes for this program. It's wild. I can't believe it. So there we go. Other than that, see this cool hat here? I got this made at Lids back in the spring. There was a guy named Rob Paulson, and he is a voiceover genius. He is like my hero. He's my dude. If you've never listened to Rob, or you probably don't realize you probably have listened to Rob, he is, like I said, he is a voiceover genius. He was the original voice for Raphael from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the 1980s. He was Yakko from Animaniacs. He's Pinky from Pinky and the Brain. Carl Weezer from, I think that was Jimmy Neutron. He's Donatello in the most recent iteration of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Nickelodeon. But the first show that I can remember watching that he voiced was before school in elementary, and it was a show called Mighty Max, and the main hero, he was like a teenage boy or something like that. He wore this like really oversized white shirt with a big old block M on it, red block M, and the chosen one, as they put in the show, had this hat, and the M would glow whenever it would open up a portal, and it would take Max and his gang of folks, mentors and guardian, with him to tackle whatever it was for the day. And it was also an educational show, so there was an educational component towards the end where it would talk about like the actual historical significance or what geographical significance of whatever was going on at the time. So I loved the show. I got to meet him at Dallas Fan Expo in the spring. But one thing that's really cool is that I graduated from Grand Blanc High School in Grand Blanc, Michigan in 2005, and every day going to and from like my classes and the lunchroom and things like that, there was this like picture with him, my headshot basically, with him and Raphael hanging on the wall right outside the administration office, and it was signed. So he's an alum of Grand Blanc High School, and when I found out he was coming, I wanted to meet him because I love the dude. I listened to his podcast, Talking Tunes with Rob Paulson. It's on Spotify and other places that you can listen to cool podcasts like this one. And I was like, I don't want to just take like a pop or like a pop vinyl. I don't want to just take like a picture or have him sign my hat or anything like that. I found my senior yearbook and I had him sign it because he's a Bobcat like I am as well. And he just had a hoot. And we talked about Michigan. We talked about life in Grand Blanc, and he was very gracious. In fact, hold on a second. Since this episode is live right now on Instagram, this is proof that he signed it. So there you go. Hello, Chase. Go Bobcats. In friendship, Rob Paulson, GBHS, class of 74. So that was pretty cool. I'll try and post a picture of that, scan it or something, and put it up in the Facebook group page, whatever. So that was pretty lengthy for a brief little what's going on weekly hunt type of thing. So thank you for entertaining me whatever. Thanks for that. Gosh, I can't think if there's anything else right now. Christmas is almost here, and for anyone celebrating Hanukkah, 8 Crazy Nights, I think, started here pretty recently. So happy Hanukkah to any of my Jewish listeners out there, anyone that observes Hanukkah. And so there we go. There's a little bit of some mental health news that I wanted to bring up. And it's interesting. This is from what's this from? U.S. News and World Report. There's an article that was published November 9th of this year, and the headline is anxiety a risk factor for dementia later in life? And the article it talks about a couple things, a little bit of doing a correlational study, and they ultimately say we can't determine from correlational studies whether moderate to severe anxiety in midlife causes dementia in later years, whether dementia in later years causes moderate to severe anxiety in midlife, or whether both may be caused by other factors such as depression, excessive stress, genetic factors common to both. So it does seem that stress is a common factor, a common denominator, as they cite in the article, for these things, for anxiety and for dementia. And they go on later to say that anxiety does seem to be present with dementia, but they're not able to completely link them. So I find that interesting that there's when you look at the DSM. Okay, so this is what we use in mental health to identify mental health disorders. If you were just looking at that on Instagram, I just held up the book, and the big purple book, the DSM-5 is what we use. And in there, we have different categories of mental disorders. And anxiety is obviously, or would, be easily identified as some kind of anxiety disorder. And whenever it comes to like your dementias, your Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, things like that, that's what we call a neurocognitive disorder. And neurocognitive disorders require some substantial testing as well as laboratory findings. So we're talking like imaging type studies, could be like a PET scan, could be some MRIs, could be anything really. Any type of medical type imaging that's used to corroborate test findings. So with some of the work that I do right now, I'll do that from time to time, where we'll do what we call a full bat or a full battery of testing. And full battery of testing usually consists of memory and concentration testing, and IQ, achievement testing, and something we call trails. Memory and concentration deals with a couple different things. That's what it's focusing on, is memory and concentration. And then the IQ, there's there's more than 10, but typically 10 is the core set of things that you're going to be looking at whenever it comes to an adult. Achievement, it's like your school subject type stuff, like your reading, your writing, and your arithmetic, the 3 R's, basically. Reading, writing, arithmetic. And then trails, which is basically glorified connect the dots. And there's a certain administration, certain timing of things that you do. And when it comes all together, you're looking at how there might be deficits in your ability to remember things, recall things, to focus on things. A full bat is typically, at least in my experience, done only on adults. And when I say adults, I mean those that are 16 and older. So we're not looking at someone 15 or younger doing a full bat. It's just the way that it's standardized, it's the way that it's set up that we do that. So, yeah. Anyways, I think this is interesting that there's an anxiety disorder, possibly with like the stress part, possibly contributing to some depression. So either a depressive or an anxiety disorder contributing to a possible neurocognitive disorder. So I'd be really interested to see how this research continues and what it will do for the mental health community and for overall the medical community in general, and how we treat things, how we work with people, and how that can inform the work that we do to prevent these things. This is a little off the beaten path for what I'm about to say, but I I read in a neuroscience journal that brain swelling has some kind of connection. I might have even brought it up in this podcast before. I can't remember if I did or not. I just thought it was really cool that brain swelling can create a higher likelihood of suicidal ideation. So if there's anything that we can do medically and therapeutically to try and prevent that kind of thing, we can, in theory, hypothetically, see a decline in suicide rates, which would be great. It'd be fantastic if we could do that. And I'm hopeful. I mean, we're still early on with a lot of research for that kind of stuff. So it's cool. It's great. So anyway, thanks for listening to this part so far. What I'm going to do is I'm going to end Instagram Live for right now, but I'll be back in a little bit to see if there's any questions or anything like that, and go ahead and get started with the actual reframed portion. Okay, so it's just us now here on the podcast. So today we are going to be talking about a show, actually not a show, a movie that you've probably heard of, that you probably remember from the 1990s. I'm guessing you do. It stars Macaulay Culkin, and it was from the year 1990. It's called Home Alone. And just a couple things about Home Alone that I thought were kind of interesting is that this show was, or why do I keep saying show? I'm sorry, y'all. This movie was in theaters forever. So it was in theaters from November until it was in theaters for 9 months. And it was at number one. It was in the top 10 until basically Labor Day weekend. So this movie did very well in the box office. And we know that movies and like the box office and premieres and stuff is totally different now. Basically 28 years later since this movie came out, in terms of like what success looks like for film. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about this and what we might be able to learn about Home Alone. Now, it's just me today. I don't have a wingman with me at all. I don't have a Marv or a Harry to help me out with my shenanigans on this show, which is fun. It's fun. We'll get back to that here, in an episode or two of having a guest back. So anyway, I think it's interesting that I had planned on doing this movie, and my church ended up doing this thing called At the Movies. And some churches do it, some don't. At the Movies is where they'll take Hollywood blockbusters, just really good movies in general, and they'll look at it for messages, basically, Christian messages that you can take from it and apply to your life. Now, I'm not going to be tackling it from a biblical perspective, not wholeheartedly. I might say a few things here and there, but there was a lot of carryover between what I had originally wanted to say and what was actually said in service. So it was pretty cool that we were on the same wavelength for the most part. So the movie starts out with the McAllister family, preparing for this trip to France, this Christmas trip to France, and it's it's Kevin's family and his extended family that are all meeting at his house for the night before they all fly out, and you have this guy, you have this police officer standing in the entrance of the house, seeing what's going on and if they have precautions for safety and security of the home, things like that, and as the introduction and whatnot goes about, you start to see this altercation between Kevin, played by Macaulay Culkin, and different members of his family, like his very butthead of a sibling, I guess, Buzz. I think that's what he's supposed to be. So if you're offended by butthead, sorry, but I mean he is. Anyway, and as a result, like pizza spilled, soda goes all over the place. It's spilled on pizzas, and he's more or less grounded for the night, and he's told to go to the attic and stay there. I don't want to see it for the rest of the night, and type of thing. And Kevin says this thing of like, I don't want to see you the rest of my life, and I think that there's a lot of hurt that can happen, like with families, in saying things that you don't really mean. And Kevin, I mean, he's a young kid. He's probably, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years old, maybe. I'm not 100% sure how old he actually is, but he's a young kid, and we can say some dumb things when we're kids and not really mean it. It's when we get older that we say things to people that it's taken a lot more seriously, and there's a lot more hurt and a lot more harm done because of it. And in the middle of the night, there's a storm or something, and a power line ends up going out, which resets the power, and everyone's late, and they're all freaking the heck out. And anyway, Kevin is left alone. He is left home alone. They are, over the Atlantic or something, before they realize that Kevin is still back home in Chicago, back home in Chi-Town. So that kind of sucks, that they get all the way over there. They're almost on a different continent before they realize they left someone home alone. And, this time of season, for I would say for a decent majority, there are people that, Christmas and Thanksgiving and this time of year, that it's a very happy time. You're celebrating things, you're getting presents, different things. But for other people, the holidays are a horrible time. It's an absolutely horrible time for them. And they just feel like it would be better if they were left home alone. They were just left alone. And I'm pretty sure I've said this before, that we're not meant to be alone. It's not good for us to be alone. And, when someone hurts us, we want to keep them at a distance. We want to have that attic to ground level type of separation from each other. And, we want to create as many barriers, as many steps to keep away from someone, to wish they weren't even around, to wish they didn't even exist, to wish they weren't in our life. And that is what a lot of the holiday is for people. And it's kind of sad that that's what it is. There are people that say they would rather, just be on the streets than to be in the same house with someone. I'm not saying in all cases, but a lot of the homeless population, there are families that are willing to let them stay with them. And they have it in their head that, they have no family that's willing to help them. And it's just weird how that works. I did used to work at a homeless shelter, like I've said before in some of these episodes, and there are families that are willing to help. that are willing to help them, like to let them stay and help them get a job and, provide food for them and clothing for them, so they can get back on their feet and go do their own thing again. I mean, we would be so lucky to have that kind of thing. I feel very fortunate to have been very fortunate in my life to when I've been on really really bad bad terms, life has been like really tough for me, that I had prior to being married, I had my dad who I could rely on, in college and whatnot, like if I needed help, like with gas or food or whatever it might have been, or even behind on a bill. Even starting out, like as an adult, like moving to West Texas in the Midland, Odessa area. That was my first time out on my own, and my dad was there for me. My mom has been there for me as well, to help pick you up. And there are people who just have it in their head, like, yeah, no one cares about me, no one wants to help me, no one thinks I'm worth a hoot or anything like that. And the holidays are a reminder of that for some people, whether it's true or not. I am not in any way diminishing the pain, the experiences that people have had with, hurts and hang-ups with family. I get it. It's a lot of it can be real or is real, but it's how do you move past that, and just how do you move past that? Just like when we're alone, when we push people away, we become much more vulnerable to things in general. And I think that's a really great illustration of what happened in the movie, right? So you got Kevin. He's having a ball at first. He's eating all the junk food he wants. We can only be so lucky. I mean, what's your junk food of choice? I want to hear about that. So those of you listening, what's your junk food of choice? Or your top, let's just go with your top 5 pieces of junk food. Post that in our Facebook group. I want to hear about that. So, comment on the post I'm going to put up, and I want to hear what's your top favorite pieces of junk food, and go from there. Anyway, so he's having a ball with the junk food, and with being around and stuff like that, and then these burglars, Marv and Harry, thinking that the house is empty and that it's going to be an easy hit for them to steal stuff. Notice Kevin is watching this rubbish movie that he's not supposed to watch, and I can't remember the name of it, but anyways, it was some kind of movie. And he flips on all the lights, and the burglars freak the heck out, and they move away. And then, as the movie goes on, there's more and more of a connection of finding out, like, hey, this kid is home alone, and there's no one to look out for him. There's no one to protect him. No one to care about him, seemingly. So he's playing us for fools, basically. Which, good for Kevin. Way to go, dude. Well done. That's what's up. And, as the movie goes on, you start to see this connection that he's forming with his neighbor that he thought was like a murderer or something. And that's the thing, like, kind of what I was talking about a second ago, that, when we are alone or just maybe not even alone, but we can have like these misconceptions about other people. And, in part, the movie does say, show that Buzz earlier in the movie was just giving Kevin a hard time, trying to scare him about the neighbor, because apparently, the neighbor buried his family member or something, and, they haven't been able to prove it. So Kevin thinks that he's living next to a murderer and he's all alone, and this guy's going to come over and murder him and things like that. Unless I'm just watching the completely wrong movie, I don't know. But he's got this misconception about the dude, and it's after, I think it's like a candlelight service or something at like a church, that they notice, or he notices that, he's got it all wrong. So, this season, this Christmas season, when you're when you're around family that you don't want to be around, or you wish there were certain family members around that you might have lost, or that are no longer here with us in this life, just know that there are people around you that do care, that are willing to listen, that are looking out for you. And if there are people out there that are hurt by family, I would urge you to take the advice of Kevin McAllister and just to call whenever he's having the conversation with his neighbor. I think his name is Mr. Myrtle. I might be wrong on that. He hasn't talked with his son in years, and they've grown estranged, and that's kind of what can happen with the holidays. It reminds, like we find. I think Christmas and Thanksgiving, and even to an extent New Year's, it's family time. And whenever you have fragmented family stuff, meaning like you have, whether like you're divorced, or there's death, or there's very strained relationships, or estranged relationships, it becomes that much more obvious because you see families spending time together, hanging out with each other, and interacting with each other. And I'm not saying that it'll get fixed and be repaired overnight, but you can put your best foot forward in making a phone call, writing a letter, sending a card. I know my wife and I are about to put our Christmas card together to mail out to friends and family, for Christmas. And there are some family members that I haven't seen in a while, and part of that is because we live in different parts of the country. Like, a lot of my family lives in the Midwest. I have a few that live out west in the California and Nevada area. We're all spread out, but relationships in general, you have to put an effort into it to really get something out of it. And the only way that you can start to work on a strained relationship, a distant relationship, and to not be alone is to do what can seem like a really awkward and really painful thing of reaching out. I don't know why, but I'm just going to go with it. This has nothing to do with Home Alone. But for some reason, when I said reaching out, I thought of the movie Space Jam. And the part, I think it's like close to the climax of the movie, they're playing the game against the Monstars, or the All-Stars, or whatever the monster team is. I think it's the Monstars. That sounds right. And Michael Jordan realizes that he's in Toon World and he can do some things that he couldn't do in the normal world. So he somehow stretches his arm from like beyond half court, I think. And anyway, he reaches and places the ball into the net, and scores the winning points for the Toon Squad. Now, that was literally the image that came to mind with the awkward part of reaching out. So that's my connection, the awkward part of reaching out. Now, you might not be able to literally reach from half court or reach from the other side of the country, from north to south or east to west. But, you can, make an attempt, a continuous attempt. If it doesn't happen the first time, don't quit. Go with the second time. If it doesn't happen the second time, go with the third time. Third time, fourth time, fifth time. Keep at it. when you have a strained relationship, it didn't become strained overnight unless something really god awful happened. Strained relationships happen because they go from something of trust and love and affection, more or less, whether it's like platonic or not. It could be platonic, it could be phileo, it could be eros. I mean, any of these types of like Greek types of love, you can look up Greek types of love or Greek names for love. You're coming from like this area of like love and trust and some form of affection for this person. And affection doesn't mean like, ooh, kiss me, please. It's not all about that. I have guy friends that I care about. I have gal friends that I care about. The number one gal that I care about is my wife and daughter. Okay? That doesn't mean I can't care about other people. But it's when things happen, they start to happen over time where you start to hurt each other more and more and more until it eventually goes from this affection to becoming this disdain, to where you're hurt so much that you close yourself off to feeling anything for that person. And again, we're going to jump to another movie, but if you remember in Empire Strikes Back, when Luke finally meets Yoda, he talks about the path to the dark side. He talks about fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. And when people are angry, they're angry. Anger is the source of, or anger comes from fear. So when someone doesn't meet a need for you, or meet an expected need for you, you put a guard up and you react in a way because it hasn't been met before. So you're going to react because it hasn't been met before, and you anticipate it not being met coming up, basically, or it not being met. So when it's not met, you've already had a fear response to something. And that fear has taught you to respond this way. And when you respond that way, or keep responding that way, that's where the anger really sets in and takes a foothold. And from there, like Yoda said, I know we're talking about Home Alone, but like Yoda said, anger leads to hate. You start to hate that person. And in turn, when you start to hate, you start to inflict even more pain, and you create more suffering for people. And people suffer in their own way in the holidays. So I would encourage you to try and do what Kevin did in the show, in the movie. I keep saying show. And don't think of it as, I'm going to create all these booby traps and whatnot to keep people out. I'm going to create a defense to protect what matters most to me. And what I would hope is most important to you is your faith and your relationships with others. So regardless of what you are, whether you're Christian, you're a Jew, you're a Buddhist, you're a Hindu, you're a Muslim, regardless of that, faith and family, what can you do to keep that kind of stuff at the forefront? What can you do to protect what matters most to you and still let people in? You notice at the end of the movie that everything is spotless, and all the damage except for Buzz's room has been cleaned up. And Kevin has had a noticeable change. Like he's just defended this home. He's just defended this home from folks. And he's like, man, he's more or less like with his body language and his demeanor, his affect, saying, man, I really want my family back. I really want to see them again. And I'm hopeful for you listening that if you have been hurt, I'm hopeful that in the future you'll have that same type of experience. Okay? And what's great is that he runs down the stairs and he thinks he hears something, and moments later he turns around, his mom's there. Mom's been traveling by planes, trains, and automobiles, more or less, to get home to Kevin. And, moments after that, like the whole family is just like, falling through the door and stuff. And ta-da, you have the end of the movie. So, anyway, this has been fun to talk about. And with that, I am going to hop back on Instagram and see if we have any questions or anything before we close this out. We'll see. We'll see if we do. And more than likely this episode, this definitely won't be the last one, that's for sure. And I'm planning on having one or two more out before Christmas, and see how it goes. And then we'll probably take a break for a week or two or more. I'm kind of looking at doing 3 weeks in a row, like 1 week in between, or not in between, but like today it's a Tuesday, so I'm planning on recording another one next Tuesday and the following Tuesday if time allows for me to do that. So right now there's no one hopping on Instagram, which is okay. If you are not already following the show on Instagram, I would highly encourage you to do that. And because I'm probably going to be doing more live discussions in the future, and probably do some questions and interactions, and I might invite some of y'all to interact with on Instagram. There's also Facebook and Twitter as well. Make sure that you tell your friends about this show. I really enjoy doing this, and I'm glad to have the people listening that do. I'd love to have more, though. I think of this as just an extension of what I do, and it's just a creative way that I get to be a counselor and also do voiceover. So, yeah. Okay. Well, that's it, y'all. Thanks for listening. Whether you're driving to work, driving home from work, taking a bath, skiing down a slope, or just in your home office or at the gym or whatever. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this guy's voice. Now, this has been a shorter-ish episode, but I really appreciate it. Again, make sure that you check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for our social media. We're all at ReFramed Pod. We just created a YouTube channel, so this will most likely be showing up on YouTube for you to listen there as well. And if you want to interact, with the show and ask questions, or send in your experience with listening to the show, or any cool, pop culture media type stuff, then send it my way. Oh yeah. So I think I'm going to end this a little differently. Instead of my regular voice, I think I'm going to choose a different voice. Let's see here. Let's see. All right now, well, thank you for taking the time to listen. As always, make sure that you take care and stay dapper. See you later. Bye-bye. Oh, I don't know. What do you think about that? Well, Oh, what do you mean? Well, You'll know if you keep saying the same three things over and over again, you'll be stuck saying that like the rest of your life. Well, alright, have it your way.